All this technology, it's blown my mind, I'll tell you. Thing is, I've also got, my attendance, right? PJ-T0-UY. PJ-T, I don't know if that's a big O or a zero.
A big O.
Big O, yeah. Dash UY. Oh, this is fantastic, this new building.
I was going to that.
Very nice.
PJTO.
Oh no, UY. PJTOUY. But the most important thing is that I get across what I've got to say to you guys, which is, this is the first lecture, as you know, in the course Machine Vision, right, which is a third-year course. I'm Lyndon Smith. I'm the module leader. So if anything goes wrong or you've got any questions or anything at all, drop me an email. We'll sort it out. If you can't sort it out, we'll have a meeting over in the BRL. Okay, if you go to the reception of the BRL, that's where you'll find me, in my office over there. And also over there, actually, is Colette, right? So in the tutorials, Colette will be helping you guys, really, and she's been putting a lot of work into it, so I think everything's going to be nice and smooth on this. So in the tutorials, she'll be there, and you can drop her an email if it's related to the tutorials. I put this on Blackboard. You'll probably find these notes on Blackboard. Or anything in general or anything else, you can just drop me an email. And stop me if you've got any questions now, today. Stop me if there's anything you want to know, I can fill you in. Hopefully it'll be fairly self-explanatory. So the lectures then, like today, are 11:30 in this room, which is pretty fantastic, actually. I thought it was pretty great. And we're starting today. Now, the tutorials are on your timetable, okay? And so I think they're split up a bit, because there's quite a few people on the course, so I didn't put a particular time on there, because you look at the timetable. So what I thought we'd do on this course is 2 weeks, say, of vision assistant, okay? And then the rest of the time on LabVIEW. Now, at this place we invested, and I started on this in 1999. That's when I got them to buy LabVIEW. And it's software by an American corporation known as National Instruments. It's a big corporation. They spend billions of dollars on developing this software, so it's very well supported. So that's another thing you can do is look at ni.com on the internet, because there's lots of stuff there, lots of example code, source code. People put stuff on it all the time. But it was originally developed as a data logging software, and the idea is that you don't want to get involved in how the computer works. Okay? You don't want to worry about stacks and pointers and stuff like that you have to worry about in C. You just want to focus on what you're trying to do from the engineering point of view. So that's the idea of LabVIEW. And so I thought we'd have 2 weeks on Vision Assistant to get you guys into it, because it's a nice, easy, gentle introduction to machine vision. And then we get into LabVIEW for the assignment. Okay? Speaking of which, I won't issue it for a while, actually, because I want you guys to get into LabVIEW before you start trying to do it. Okay? But we've got 2 parts in the assignment. The LabVIEW programming and the essay. Right, and I put a lot of emphasis on the essay due to the fact that people get carried away with the programming and forget about the essay quite often. But it's all self-explanatory, and I'll tell you all about it in detail later on. Then, of course, we've got an exam, which will be in January, and it will be about what I'm talking about in the lecture. So I won't ask you about something completely different, though it's good to read around the subject. Okay. Actually, while I'm mentioning reading around the subject, there's a book called The Image and Vision Handbook by a company called Stemmer, okay, who supply loads of machine vision stuff and has done for us 20-odd years, more than that. And I want to get you guys each a copy of this, okay, because it's very useful. You'll find it useful for the assignment. Loads and loads of background information on cameras and setups and how you use them and everything else. The only problem I got is that each one's pretty heavy, okay, so I'll break the back carrying them around. So what I think I might do, okay, is we'll try to get them into the BRL reception, okay. So if you guys go down there and ask Gordon, who's a very great guy on the door, he's a great guy, for these books he'll hand you one, assuming I can get enough of them, which I'm trying to do right now. So that's it then, right? That's it really. I may as well give up now. But end it there, right? You know about it now, right? But has anybody got any questions about what we've been on about so far? Yeah.
What's the split between the...
50-50. Keep it simple. Anything else? It's not always 50-50 for all my modules, but this one, keep it simple. All right, then. I got a ridiculous number of slides, like 40 or something like that. Okay, so I'll just zip through some of them because we can always come back to them next week, or you can ask me about them and I'll go through them in detail at some point. But I won't assume that you guys know anything about it. Has anybody got a background in computer vision or machine vision here? Has anybody got a lot of programming experience? Oh, good. I say good because apparently LabVIEW is 6 times easier than C to learn. So that's, I think we got the right software for you guys. But so what we're trying to do in computer vision or machine vision is take an image of a scene, right, typically, and then do some image processing, okay, and then do some feature recognition, analysis, to try and get some useful information out of the scene. Right? So what I talk a lot about aerospace. I think you guys got a lot of background in aerospace, you're on aerospace awards and so on, so I talk a lot about that. There's quite a lot going on. And then I talk about some other applications as well. And then, me and Mel in the lab, and we're in the Centre for Machine Vision, the BRL. And we've been there since we rigged up in 99. And we've done, I don't know if any of you guys saw that thing I put on the internet, that video from last time. But it's like a website we rigged up a while ago when I was talking about it. But we've done projects for clients all over the world. And our niche, I would say, is 3D. Most labs are looking at, in universities, are looking at databases which are on the internet, like 2D databases normally, just loads of images. Like ImageNet or something like that, And then, but what we're doing is that we're going out with our systems and gathering data in the field, typically, with some advanced 3D vision systems. So we're getting more rich data because we're getting that range data or 3D data, different types. And we're very oriented towards business. We do lots for companies all around the world, different projects. We've got lots on at the moment, for example. So practically orientated. And there's 2 niche areas. One is 3D, and the other is deep learning, or machine learning. And that's a big niche area for us as well. We've got a lot of expertise in that. And Colette's got a lot of expertise in that, actually, for instance. Got a chat with her. She's doing face recognition, medical research using deep learning. It's quite fascinating. Applications of research I was just talking about. And we've got all these advantages, which I'll go on about in a minute, okay, about deep learning advantages. I'll put this slide in. Now, I start off talking about an application. I thought, get straight in there so you know what kind of thing we're doing, okay? The application I like talking about is one I could do with in my garden, actually, is a system for detecting weeds in grass. And if you can do that, and people will be doing that in the future people won't be spraying herbicide everywhere, because apart from it being dangerous, really, it's not particularly safe, it's expensive, bad for the environment. So what you want to do is identify a weed, right, and then shoot a little bit of herbicide at it. Or you could zap it with a laser, or you could even hoe it out mechanically. So you want to identify that weed. So but the thing is that weeds we're talking about are in grass, because it's pasture land. Because I don't know if you know anything about this, but cows and so on, it's not healthy for them to eat dockweed. It's quite unhealthy. But other types of weed, if you like, or broadleaf plants like clover, are actually good for the ground and the animal, actually. So if you spray a load, that's another problem. If you're spraying weed killer everywhere, you're killing off all the good stuff like the clover, and that's a bad thing. And if it was in mud or something, we wouldn't have a problem. But we're trying to do, it's a very busy image with a bit of dockweed in some grass. So how are we going to do that? And there are various ways of trying to do it, actually, which I could go into. But we found that deep learning was very effective for this. Deep learning gives us abilities to analyse weed in grass and identify it comparable to humans. But I can tell you, if you're looking at some weed from grass, right, and you've only got 5% or less of a weed, then it's not easy for a human to detect it. Not that easy sometimes, And I wrote a paper on it, which I put on the internet on this lecture for this today, and that's me. Okay, I was at the conference waiting for someone to come along so I could talk to them about this paper, but it was a photonics conference. Sorry?
What did you say it was a conference of?
Photonics. Photonics. I don't know if anybody knows about photonics, but it does cover machine vision, computer vision, but it's also largely about the physics of optics and glasses and mirrors and that kind of stuff, and special types of lasers and so on. And this was in San Diego, this conference. It was a great conference, and actually a fantastic city, Research does have its advantages. That's a fantastic place to be. But there I was waiting for someone to come along, because they all wanted to talk about physics of reflections and complex stuff. But I did get some guys coming up. We had an interesting chat about that. Yeah, SPI it's an organisation called SPI, which is a photonics organisation, but they have some good conferences. We're just trying to publish a paper at the moment in one of their journals, which is really a pretty good journal. And the paper's about, it's a bit of a digression. It's about virtual physiotherapy. Okay, because we had a project which I ran, developing a virtual physiotherapist. I just wrote the paper a couple of days ago. I wrote half of it, and I'm trying to get a research fellow in that to write the other half. I haven't put this at all on, because there's so much stuff going on. I haven't put this on the internet, but I can tell you about it if you're particularly interested in that. I can tell you about it. But with COVID out, it's quite a good idea having a virtual physiotherapist, an automatic system that can give you physiotherapy and check how you're doing and all the rest of it. Again, using deep learning, 3D and deep learning. Oh, and that's the paper. I stuck that onto the blackboard. Oh yeah, so there's some stuff I put onto the further reading section, and also onto some other stuff in relation to what's in books and in papers, and journal papers, and the websites, relating to our centre, I suppose you'd say. Have a look. There's also, I just put a file on there called Useful Books, I think I called it, and it's got a list of books which I got the library to buy, which are now in the library, including a book I wrote, so I'll give you that special plug, of course. But, so that's it. So have a look at that. 'Cause when it comes to the exam, I don't want you to just reproduce what I'm saying in the lectures. I want to look for a bit of reading around and different sources and internet books,
What was the book called you said to pick up?
Which one, sorry?
What was the book called you said you were trying to get in for us to pick up?
Oh yeah, it's published by Stemmer Imaging, right? Who are a machine vision supplier. Because over the years we bought loads of equipment from different companies. Stemmer's one of the main ones in Europe. It's got the biggest warehouse in Europe. Another one we're dealing with actually is Scorpion, and they are sponsoring our new vision lab in this building, which I'm trying to get up together. They're doing some equipment. But anyway, that book is called the Image and Vision Handbook, and it's published by Stemmer. And it's bloody massive, unfortunately. But you can get it online if you want to go online. Go on Stemmer, you can download a PDF and so on. You can do that. But I'm trying to get you the paper version, and that's what that is. It's really, to be honest, that's more of a case of well, it's very comprehensive, so it's worth looking at. But it's more like talking about their technology in particular. Our recommended books, there we go, that's what I was just talking about. So then, what we're trying to do in machine vision is recognise relatively complex scenes, or difficult scenes, I guess. Like, I've got a course where I get people to analyse coins, and by measuring the area, which they've been doing for quite a few. I've been running this for years, goes quite nicely. And that's okay, of course, unless you've got something like that going on, in which you've got occlusion, with one coin on top of another. Things can get very complicated pretty easily. So normally you've got to structure the environment in machine vision, okay? Structure the environment. In other words, simplify things a bit, so the machine vision camera is going to be able to get useful information out of a scene. Generally, you have to do that. But deep learning requires much less structuring than other techniques that we're going to get doing this course, like traditional machine vision. You see, there's two things. There's traditional machine vision or computer vision, which is the kind of stuff we're going to be doing in this course. And then there's deep learning, which I'm also going to talk about and introduce during a couple of lectures. But deep learning is more of it requires loads of data, and it's like an AI kind of approach. And it's very, very popular in machine vision research. It's extremely popular. If you go to any conference, there'll be loads of papers on deep learning and AI. But I want you to get into the traditional machine vision, because that's neglected nowadays, I think, really. So if you get into the traditional machine vision, you've got a grounding in that, then we can go on to AI and make use of that as well. Now, I don't want to jump straight to that and then... So the assignment will be traditional machine vision analysis. Now, that's structured it a bit. We separated everything here, but we've still got a bit of a challenge. We've got to recognise these different objects. And that's the challenge. How are we going to recognise them? What people don't realise is that people think, I think, that computer vision is straightforward, like humans, common sense, if the computer's going to recognise it. But to the computer, that's just a load of data. The computers don't have common sense, or they just see a load of data. Unless you model it somehow, they're not going to be able to recognise anything. Machine vision is more complicated than a lot of people think who are not really into it, I suppose. Yeah, so we've got the input is the scene we're looking at, and the output is the decision, description, the action, or the report. And this, we have written down there. So we're trying to automatically understand a visual environment. Very ambitious, as it says there. We have to worry a bit about the physics of image formation, which I'll talk about a bit, and we can go on, as I say, and talk about advanced AI techniques. I'd like you to be aware of them and how they work by the end of this course. Now, why is it important? Well, I think that human vision is the most important sense, really. What do you think the second most important sense is? I suppose now robotics as a subject. Right? What's the second most important sense out of all that? I mean, if vision's the first, what do you imagine the second is? Touch. Yeah, tactile is the second. In fact, some people think tactile's the first and vision's the second. Of course, being into vision, I'm the opinion that vision's first. But yeah, because we could spend the whole lecture just talking about basic tactile stuff, and this is a very important subject. If you get a robot to do something automatically that humans can easily do, like putting a nut onto a bolt, sure, next to impossible. I mean, you need loads of tactile feedback and what they call compliance, active, passive compliance. But anyway, vision is extremely important because we've got to interpret the world around us and interact with it. So we're getting data in terms of pixels in images then, and we got. Suppose you're looking at 100 by 100 image. We've obviously got 10,000 bytes of data with 10,000 pixels. Single TV frames. I just wrote 65. Wouldn't be 65 nowadays. It'd be 720 by 1,000 or something. But it used to be 65, and we've got 1.17 megabytes. You might think that's more than 625 times 625. Can anybody think why that's more than 625? If you multiply 625 by 65, it doesn't come to 1.7 million. It comes to 300,000 or something. Any ideas? Yeah.
Because of the colour.
Yeah, 3 channels, red, green and blue, colour, so you need more information, that's right, in this case. Actually, having said that, most of the time we don't deal with colour, because we're just trying to get geometries and shapes and so on out of the systems. Colour is not something, it's not used that much in machine vision. Okay, so if we're looking at the human eye, lens, focus on the retina. Okay, I think you know all this stuff, pretty straightforward stuff. It's just where we're coming from on the human analogy. Yeah. I was watching Lives in the Wild the other day. Has somebody seen that show? Oh, God, what a fantastic show. This bloke had a detached retina, though. He apparently lost all his vision. It freaked me out when I heard that. I don't know if you can treat that one. Sorry about his digressions, but that's a great show. Now, check out Lives in the Wild, right, on My 5. Right? What a show. I mean, the last guy, this guy in Arkansas, this blew me away, the whole thing. But, sorry, right. So the brain's interpreting the image data. So what have we got with the machine vision setup? We've got something analogous to that. And obviously, the human's got the pupil for transfer of the light. We've got the retina, the camera. The cameras we've got in the machine, and then obviously the brain and the computer is the analogy there. When you're looking at things, right, you're trying to read something. If you're looking at a page of text, right, and you're looking at a letter, have you ever noticed that you can, as far as being in focus goes, you can hardly see anything other than the next couple of letters next to the one you're looking at? Have you noticed that? I mean, when you're looking around this room now, you're only seeing a very, very small angle in high resolution sharpness, aren't you? The rest of it's kind of a blurred, and the further away from the centre of view is, the more blurred it is. That goes to show, I think, millions of years of evolution, and the brain's only able to deal with a tiny bit at high resolution. So that shows how demanding it is. And that's why we keep talking about increasing resolution of cameras. We are increasing them all the time. But there's a downside to that in terms of the image processing time required at very high resolutions, going up geometrically. So we don't use higher resolutions than we need for a given application. And a lot of the time, 5 megapixel will be enough. Even for good metrology, precision metrology applications, 5 megapixels is enough. Unlike, when you're buying a camera now, they're pushing like 15, 20 megapixel, whatever they have now. So those are meant to be a schematic of a scene in interpretation of the system. Now, this is how the image is in the camera. Now, for historical reasons, it starts at the top here and goes down and along rather than down the bottom. I think it's got to do with the way it just happened to develop it that way. So the pixels, the intensities is the brightness of them, 0 to 255 in an 8-bit system. Typically, and that's a lot of the time that's enough. Yeah, so, and then something you'll be doing in the tutorial with Colette will be getting into some thresholding. So with Vision Assistant, there's a very good tutorial that comes online with it, which you'll work through, and I don't think you'll have any trouble with that. It's pretty great, that tutorial. And one of the things you do is start thresholding images to start measuring blobs, they call them. So you see, you're starting off with a complex, busy image. But the computer, again, can't interpret that. You want to simplify it and reduce the data. So you do a thresholding operation, which turns everything to a 1 or a 0, instead of 0 to 255. Okay? And you've got to be careful when you do that. In LabVIEW, when you're trying to display an image, which is a binary image, you've got to make sure you use the right palette. Okay? This will all become clear. You might know what the hell I'm on about, but when you start doing this, it will all become clear what I'm talking about. You need to make sure you use the right palette. So if you're trying to display a binary image, you need to use a binary palette. The reason I mention this is that everybody I know, including myself, when they started doing this, was trying to display a binary image with a grayscale palette, and the screen went black, and they wondered what was going on for about a day or two, you know. And I'm just trying to avoid you wasting that time. So thresholding then. So we're just trying to get from this loads of data, 40,000 bytes of data, just down to this dimension that we want, which is, in this case, 90 millimeters. So Vision Assistant then, you see, it was all different when I tried to get into this years ago. It was like ridiculous, you know. Like we had to write a C program, right, to do something. You had to compile it, run it, see what it was doing, but wasn't doing what you wanted, and go back to start writing the C program again. It was an absolute nightmare. In Cranfield, when I did a master's on this in the 80s. But nowadays, you can. I mean, it's all available from drop-down menus, right? So in Vision Assistant, a high-level shell written in LabVIEW. So all the functionality, all the functions, all the image processing of LabVIEW is available in Vision Assistant, right? You get an image in there, you're dragging it down these menus to do things like thresholding and all the rest of it. You can see what's happening to the image in real time in front of you. So it's very easy to use. A very nice introduction to it all. You know what I think is clever about Vision Assistant, and again, they didn't have this when they first launched it, but now, right, when you do that, down the bottom of the screen, you'll see LabVIEW code. So the system automatically creates LabVIEW code from what you're doing with these drop-down menus. Okay, well, I think that's really clever, actually, because, you know, compared to, you used to just to program it yourself. You used to have to look at what you were doing and try and program it yourself before. So that's kind of nice. So that's why I think it's a good introduction to LabVIEW, because it's even generating the code for you, it's showing you to start with, you know, so you can get into it like that. Any questions about anything I'm going on about so far, apart from what's the Aussie on about? These things here are different ways of capturing images, okay? Because what you normally do with something like LabVIEW is you've got the software running, and you've got a camera rigged up, and you try and capture some images. Say something comes along a conveyor belt, you capture an image of it. The simplest and easiest way of doing that is snap, just a snap and an image of it. Grab is more if you need a high-speed synchronization situation. And then sequence is if you've got a load of images. You want to capture a load of images for like a movie, you know, to get something that's happening dynamically. Again, you can play around with this. When you run Vision System, you get something like this. So you can just open this up and go on there. So there's a bit of background to what to do. That's what it looks like when you start running Vision Assistant. The image will come in here, you'll see, pull down from these menus. I think something like this, until you start playing around with it, it won't really mean much, but when you start playing around with it, the penny will drop, especially with LabVIEW, actually. Nobody's happens to have used LabVIEW before, though. Has anybody got any programming experience? Not at all?
Last year we used Vision Builder, which I think is similar.
Oh, Vision Builder, right, you're there then. You're wised up straight away. Because Vision Builder is actually a bit more complicated than this. Vision Builder is like Vision Assistant. It's very similar. It's just a little bit more complicated. So if you can use Vision Builder, you'll be able to use this. least visions, you have to use a vision assistant. Has anybody else got any experience of any kind of programming languages? C? You're a C programmer?
I wouldn't say the C program, but I've had experience with it.
Well, this is all going to be like that, isn't it? It's very straightforward. Yeah. Well, what I was going to say is that the difference between something like C, right, and this, is that, apart from C being an absolute nightmare, it's a nightmare. I did my PhD in quite a lot of C programming. Jesus. Part of my life is gone. I've lost 6 months of my life going somewhere. But the thing about C is, obviously, it's sequential, right? Like BASIC. I mean, I expect you guys have done a bit of BASIC in your time. I've still got a ZX Spectrum, I believe. I bought in 1981. But so the lines are like coming down lines of code. Okay, you do one line, the thing that executes a line, then executes another line sequentially. Okay, and that's how the control of the operation of the program works in a conventional script-based programming language like C or BASIC. But this thing, LabVIEW, is not like that. It's a graphical programming language, which I've got to admit takes you a little while to get your head around. Things work slightly differently. So the control of the program occurs through data flow along wires. And the program itself is in LabVIEW, anything called the block diagram, and it looks like a circuit board, or printed circuit board design or something like that. But it's not, it's a program. Because you have wires all over the place and go into the nodes doing things, and that's how it works. But I'll go through in detail. What I thought I'd do is probably alternate a lecture on basics of machine vision, then a lecture on introduction to LabVIEW, because it takes anybody a while to get their head around something like that. And certain things are done differently in LabVIEW to how they're done in C or BASIC, and I think I need to make those points clear because it's not that obvious sometimes how they're done differently. Counting, for example, is done differently, and you don't use variables in LabVIEW. Right? You don't use them. Well, you can use them, but I strongly recommend not using them. And I wouldn't recommend using recursion either. Recursion, which is, let A equal A plus 1. That's recursion, but you wouldn't want to do that in LabVIEW for a load of reasons, but you don't need to. There's other ways around it. So anyway, yeah, there you go. Tips. I won't go through that here, you can just read them. Little tips on saving time, on scripting. Yeah. A script is LabVIEW vision assistant, remembering what you've done. It's like a macro, I suppose. You do certain things by pulling down these menus, and then the thing remembers it in the form of a script. You did a threshold followed by you did a whatever, And so you can save the script, and that's what a lot of people do. We use this kind of stuff, and just run the script, if you want. But the thing also converts it into LabVIEW code at the bottom of the screen. All this will become clear when you use it, especially the idea of graphical programming, because I could stand here all day talking about that, and I don't think you get a better idea 5 minutes of having to go yourself with LabVIEW than I could possibly get across, really. Oh, yeah. Now, so what we've got then in a vision system is a computer seeing things as they are, right? And so the human brain doesn't really do that necessarily all the time, does it? And that's where optical illusions come in. Because the brain, depending on the scene and the things surrounding the thing you're looking at, can perceive things slightly differently. In other words, as I got here, the human brain interprets an image. So in this thing here, below, regions A and B look obviously to be different brightness, right? But that is an optical illusion. Yeah, they're the same brightness. They're the same. Now, yeah, they're exactly the same. Now, first time I showed this to a class years ago, they flatly refused to believe it, and that was you know, it's a me, that was it, But what you can do is, I put this on Blackboard. You can take this image out and stick it into Vision Assistant and start measuring brightness. Or if I covered everything up apart from A and B, they would look the same. If I was crazy enough to make to make a sort of a template or something. Anyway, I thought I'd stick that in there. Optical illusions, yeah, can't go wrong.
Excuse me?
Yep, yep.
Do you remember the gold and blue dress a couple of years ago?
I do. That's a good example. Yeah. Was it gold for you or blue?
It was blue for me.
It's gold for me.
What was it for vision?
Good question. But vision does just look at numbers. I think that's what you can say. It doesn't, yeah. Vision Builder is a vision system which just does mathematical analysis of images. It doesn't have perception like we do. But you could argue that a convolutional neural network does have perception. And that sounds ridiculous, but it's almost, if you ask me, it's the biggest breakthrough that's occurred in AI. It's CNNs and related networks. It's a type of neural network. So it's a very crude simulation of the brain. And I spent a couple of lectures talking about it. It was in 2012 that some dude in a competition in the States, was it? Suddenly got an improvement in face recognition capability of machines using the ImageNet, it was ImageNet database, of something dramatic, 10% or something like that. And everybody realized at that time that this was the future of machine vision, really, using these deep neural networks. I mean, neural networks as a subject is bad enough, let alone deep one. So I don't worry if you don't know what I'm talking about. I'll try to give a more gentle introduction to what I'm talking about. I had a class before, I mentioned neural networks years ago, these can freak out some people. But, it's just a very crude simulation of the way human brain works. So if I just talk about, well, that's it. That's a very gentle introduction to the course, a very over-general introduction to the course. But some of the stuff we've been doing over the years at UWE, as I say, we're into 3D. We were working with Imperial College on a project. The idea was to get the next generation of vision systems up together for airports. When you go down to the Bristol airport and you go in through that automatic with your face and show your face and everything else, that's just a 2D system.
They don't like glasses.
Sorry?
Quite often they don't like glasses.
Did they not? I thought you were going to say, so no, it's not. It's a 3D one, actually. Thank God you didn't, because you never know when they're going to update it. No, but you say they ask you to take your glasses
Yeah.
off? Oh, interesting.
No, because some people do sort of glasses in like their cars, but might like the cameras struggle to like, detect your eye shape something with glasses.
Yeah. But, to be honest with you, these 2D systems are not that good. Because there was a famous case, I can't remember what it was, where a husband and wife got their passports mixed up and the system didn't even realise it, sent them through. And also, right, any 2D system, no matter who it's by, and some big companies are into this, like Intel, are into this, and any of these systems can be fooled just by holding up a photograph or an image of somebody else in front of your face. Any kind of 2D system, no matter how fancy it is, will be fooled, can be fooled, spoofed by doing that. So there's a lot of emphasis and need to develop 3D techniques in vision systems for things like that, fairly high security applications. You see, vision systems for face recognition are quite common in various sectors, but the reliability up to now hasn't been 100%. It's been like 90%. Because for light changes, you wouldn't think that's important, but it makes a big difference to light change. So if you get 3D, then you're getting to a situation where you could drive it up to very near 100%, and then you get all sorts of extra applications. You can buy stuff with the shape of your face rather than messing around with pins and so on. And all sorts of fairly high security applications suddenly open up. At the moment, it's just like checking who's in the shop and that kind of thing, really, but rather than actually doing the transaction. This is only for people who want to get involved in it, right? Because sometimes people get worried about Big Brother or something like that. I'm not suggesting any of this should be a surveillance thing. It's just the people who want to participate in it to make their lives easier, really. Well, that's the system we built in the lab. That's Gary there. I don't think anybody knows Gary Atkinson. He developed this, right? And we took it, with General Dynamics we were involved, we took it to Wales, to their factory, right? He told me that this was the lightweight version. And I nearly bust my back trying to carry that. I think that was really heavy. I said, what's a heavy one like then? But you see these round here, it's got these lights round here, okay? And each one of those is synchronized with a high-speed image capture from this camera here. And I mean very high speed, hundreds of frames a second. And so when you're walking through there, you'd think it's just one image being taken. It happens so quickly. But you take a series of images from different angles, right? And this is a technique which I'll talk about quite a lot, called photometric stereo. One camera and a set of lights. And to cut a long story short, there's a lighting model that tells you how it relates the angle of the light to how bright you expect it to be. Okay? And we can use that to recover the 3D and 2D information from anything you stick under it, really. And it's very reliable, it works very well. All sorts of applications. Cancer detection. I had developed a skin analyzer 20 years, using it for 20 years. All sorts. You wouldn't believe the range of applications. Looking at stone, looking at polished stone, looking at tiles, looking at banknotes. Well, I'm not meant to mention that, apparently, but looking at banknotes and so on and so forth. Yeah. We've got ongoing projects using this. Another thing we did it for was looking at plants with Edinburgh University. So if you're looking at a plant, Arabidopsis, okay, and you're trying to work out how fast this plant is growing, okay, the problem with just looking out with a 2D camera is that the leaves move around different angles, and you get parallax effects, and the leaf angle measurement, area measurement, is going to have error in it because of that. But if you can recover the orientation of the surface of the leaf, then you can correct for the parallax and get a more accurate estimate of the growth. We've got some really nice papers out on that. You know, they do things like change the temperature, the lighting, and humidity, and this affects the growth. So that's quite nice. We did a lot of stuff on phenotyping and to do with plants with various people. We did a project for Autoglass. When you've got a chip in your windscreen and they come along to fix it, they want to know what to bring with them, how much stuff to bring. So we had a system where the motorists use the smartphone just to get up an image. And you can see the kind of images we get, right? This is typical. A hell of a busy image with all sorts of stuff in the background. We have to work out the size of this chip. But we did manage it. It does work pretty well. They were very happy with it. And gives you an estimate of the chip size. So you can repair the chip rather than having to replace the whole window. We've got another project with them going on. This is my favourite project. How's my cow? Because I live in Somerset. I finally got a project nearby. You know, so we've got a farm in Somerset. We're measuring these cows. And it's 3D measurement. Okay. And so what we could do with this is that we can measure the condition of the cow. Right? How much fat it's got on it. How bony it is. We've got a technique of the 3D camera and a special technique we developed called the rolling ball algorithm, which I won't go into now, but we measure how bony the animal is with this. And this operates up in the roof about when they're going through to get milked. And it can also measure lameness. I don't know if I got a slide on that. No, it's not. Yeah, it can also measure lameness. And apparently quite a few cows are lame at any time, you know, like 5 or 10% of them are lame. And if you don't catch it early, you have to cull them. And what amazed me is that when dealing with these, I went down to the farm and he said, with the herdsman, a woman, they can, okay, the cow pretends it's not lame if it sees the herdsman. Right? It stops limping. Which I didn't know cows could do that kind of stuff, but that's what they do apparently. With this, of course, it's operating all the time up in the roof, so they don't know when it's operating, so we can catch the lameness. This has been bought by Arla, and they've got it around the UK in a lot of places around. They've got about 20 installations in the UK, and they're just trying to sell it to Europe at the moment. So we've got quite good impact on some of this. This alone, just this project, could form an impact case study. An impact case study shows the impact of our research here at UWA, and that's useful because the government uses it to work out how much money they want to give us for the next lot of research. So this kind of has a benefit like that for us, as well as just academic publishing of papers and so on. Yeah. Anybody got any questions on this or anything else? Oh, here we are. They're going through the run here, 30 frames a second. Through the run. And you can see here that the things that, because it's recovering the shape in 3D, it's either to recover the spine, right? And the spine, the curvature of the spine, is an indication of lameness, along with limping, right? Now, limping is an irregular movement of the legs. What they were doing before they dealt with us on this was putting these accelerometers on the leg of the animal, right? So they stick an accelerometer on the leg, and then maybe you get a radio, RDFI signal, which tells you if the animal's limping or not. But apart from the animal does not like it stuck on its leg, it's also expensive and difficult. I mean, it can interfere with other systems on the farm, the radio signal as well. So the idea of being able to measure lameness in a completely non-contact way is quite attractive to them. Oh yeah, we did a project for the MOD. That's something I made up, a little thing I made. Can anybody see anything on that? Or is it too far away? Yeah, so you apply the technique. I hope this works. Oh, right. You apply the technique. What happened there? And anyway, it gets rid of the camouflage. I don't know why it's gone off to the side there. But it removes the camouflage and just gives you the 3D data. So this went well, actually, this project. It went quite nicely. So the idea was that, I don't know if I've got another slide on this. The idea was that, there's another one. Sorry about this, it seems to have got corrupted a bit there. We lost the original image. But we originally had loads of camouflage on that one. And it's called the albedo, right? The colour, the surface colour is the albedo. And we're removing that to give information on the shape underneath. So the idea was to detect things like suspicious objects under clothing, possibly explosives, I guess. And so this here was the image that we captured of, we had this dummy called George apparently. We had this dummy, right, wearing a t-shirt. And you can see all the camouflage on the t-shirt, right? And but this is something we superimposed from the analysis. So we apply first of all, we apply the photometric stereo to get rid of most of this pattern on the t-shirt, right? And then we've got the surface normals, you see, because what photometric stereo gives you is the surface gradient at each point. And we call it the bump map. I'll explain this in more detail later on. It's a little bit unusual concept. But you get the orientation at each point, where you normally have just the brightness of an image. You get a vector, which gives you the orientation of the surface. And then we can analyse the surface orientation to work out where the curvature is. So here, we're working out, this got curvature, because that's the corners of the box that's been inserted under there. And here we get some curvature from these cylinders that we put in there, a bit like meant to be simulating dynamite, I suppose. So then we can do some conventional, once we got this, we can do some more conventional image processing to work out, to just separate, we call segment these features that are of interest. So we've gone from this kind of busy image to this. And it'll work on different scales. We thought, yeah?
And do you use visible light for that? I mean, what do you say?
You can use what you want, really. I mean, the fact is that, to be honest with you, you're better off using near infrared, right? Now, in, visible light, when you go just into the infrared, that's near infrared. And that actually works better than visible light. And also it's completely invisible and covert. So the idea was to install this in these night vision goggles for this army. And you definitely want to use that there, because you wouldn't want to start flashing lights on and exposing your whereabouts. So that's a good question. And we started off using visible light, but they went to near infrared. And it turns out, right, suppose you're using the skin, right? It turns out that this technique works actually better in infrared than it does in visible light, for reasons I won't go into, probably. But it does work slightly better in infrared. I can explain why if you want, but yeah, it works in infrared. Yeah, that's the answer to your question. Any other questions? And then we have the skin analyzer. This is a Mark IV. So we had 3 versions before this. We used it with 1,000 patients at hospitals in Bristol. But I don't know if anybody knows anything about medical research, but it's a hell of a business, actually.
Mole mapping.
Sorry?
Mole mapping.
Yeah. Mole mapping. It's big in Australia, actually. So you take an image in mole mapping with a high resolution, probably SLR camera, of the whole body. And you just check these moles, and you check their location and whether there's any change over a period of time. Because change is a bad sign. But this thing is a bit more elaborate than just straightforward mole mapping, in that we're actually analysing the moles in detail to try and work out what's going on, whether they're suspicious or not. So, yeah, and to be honest with you, there's a lot of people doing this with smart cameras nowadays, smartphones cameras. But my personal view is it's not that good an idea, because with a camera it's all over the place, and the lighting's changing all over the place, and that makes it difficult to get repeatability. With this device you get very good repeatability, because the lighting's controlled and the distance is controlled. But one thing we did come out of this, with regard to moles actually, one thing that came out of it, for example, was that on a mole, you've got texture on the top of the mole, right? 3D texture. Now, if that texture is irregular, okay, right, irregular, the more irregularity there is, the more chance it might be cancer. No one had done that before, because I don't think anybody had been able to recover textures on top of moles with any instruments from pigmented lesions. Yeah. So that's interesting, but it's difficult to get funding for it because there's so much going into smartphones that that's what people are focusing on. Yeah, this is out of date, isn't it? But everybody, it used to be a very rare disease, skin cancer, because not many people went on holidays years ago to Greece or wherever, but then many people go on holidays, so it's increased unfortunately quite dramatically in the UK. And it's a rather complicated problem. You can see there how many different types of mole you get, and that's just some of them. There's about 20 different types of cancer. You can get skin cancer, 20 different types. And melanoma is always fatal unless it's removed, surgically removed. So the earlier you remove it, the better. This is quite an issue, actually, because people, unfortunately, do die from doctors missing them and misdiagnosing them. People, they do die from it. So it's quite a strong motivator. So what, as a consequence of that, GPs, because they're not very much trained in it, send everybody that comes to them, more or less, to the hospital, to Southmead. Right? So the hospital, the pigmented lesion clinic in Southmead is completely overrun with people who any specialist can see immediately there's nothing wrong with, because the GP doesn't know, really. And apart from being a waste of money, that's also tends to, make it more likely they'll overlook somebody who does have something wrong with them. So any kind of tool that would help the GP to be more accurate in their referrals to somewhere like Southmead would be a great thing. At the moment, there isn't really one. All they got is a ruler, because they can't really measure change really well. Cancer Research UK are quite into this. I've been doing projects with them. Got a project at the moment with them. A great charity, actually. Cancer Research UK. But what was I going to say about this? I'm going to make some great observations which I've completely forgotten. But so it's quite a serious problem. The way the doctors do it at the moment is something called ABCD rules. And so they just try to estimate asymmetry of the mole, border irregularity, colour variation, and dimension. Anything over 6 millimetres diameter is a little bit dodgy. But at the moment, you see, the doctors can't measure these things. They can just give you a subjective idea. With this skin analyzer, they can actually measure it, get a number out. And if that number changed over a couple of weeks, then you probably want to send them to this lesion clinic. Yeah. We have published about 25 journal papers on this, and I've had 4 PhDs on this, and spent £2.6 million on it. Well, yeah.
When the government funds software like this, is there anything to stop the developer privatising it?
No, because the government generally want to see them privatise it. I mean, we got a 600 years ago a £600,000 or £700,000 grant for this, and it was by the DTI, or Innovate UK as it's known. And the whole idea of it was to help British companies to exploit it. That's what they wanted to do. And that's generally what they want to do, because they're trying to help British industry. If you ask me, though, with something like this, if you could exploit this, I'd be happy to see anybody exploit it, because at the moment it's hanging around on a shelf, and it'd be good to get anybody to get out there, let alone worry about making money on it. Because saving lives is... You mean, are you on about foreign companies, or...?
Well, I mean as in, for people to have access to this, it not being the NHS and having to, pay loads of money for it.
Yeah.
Instead of it being widely in the NHS.
Yeah. The trouble with the NHS, though, is that, a great organisation as it is, is that it's so slow that maybe it's necessary to go that way in the first case, just to get it off the ground, and then start getting into the NHS as fast as you can after that. Because, in my experience, the chances of getting here with the NHS, we've done lots of projects with the NHS, and great, I mean, I've got a lot of respect for it, but it's very tremendous inertia. I remember I had a project once when I did to get ethical approval. In the NHS, ethical approval for everything is the same. If it's a drug, it's the same as what I just want to take some images. So it took me 6 months to get the ethical approval. I think by the time I did it, I got one person scanned or something, one person scanned. But the same system I took to London, to a clinic at Harley Street, and we got hundreds of people scanned, which you didn't have to worry about, that kind of thing, So, the answer, I think, is to just try and get out there one way or another. I had to spend a whole life on lobbying the health service to get there, and I can't do that. I've got to do some research, But this is my personal favourite project, although it's a bit frustrating. So, at the moment, there's 2 ways we can analyse it. The 2D way, which is just like images, I was talking about, ABCD, that we can do now. That we could do. You know, we could introduce this tomorrow into doctors to do that. The bottom thing is more of a research area where we're recovering the texture in 3D. Okay, and this is really exciting, I think, because that's not done at the moment. It's not analysed, but if we apply deep learning to that, maybe with the top data as well, then I don't see why we couldn't start getting an automated diagnosis system together. Most people, doctors, would freak out if I said that, you know, but it's not magic. You know, you're looking at a mole. I mean, to get complete 100% accuracy, you need to do a biopsy. But you could simulate to some extent some of the things that go on in the clinic, I think, in the prevention lesion clinic with deep learning on all that data. But you need a vast amount of data for that. I think I remember what I was going to say now. You need a vast amount of data, okay? So, luckily, melanoma is not that common. It's pretty rare. So we don't have a vast amount of data, right? But what we can do is start analysing people who've got harmless moles. I don't know if anybody's heard of seborrheic keratosis, a type of harmless mole. It's very common. It looks bad, but it's completely harmless. And now they go to the doctors, and lots of them do. We could get a very, very good model for that using deep learning, right? And if we get a great model for that, then we know it's not melanoma. I mean, if you can, you know, I mean, it's like Sherlock Holmes, isn't it? When you eliminated the impossible, whatever's left must be the case, or something like that. We've, whatever he said. But, do you know what I mean? We said that's harmless, so we could have to look at those people. That's simplified the work we got. That's one way of doing it, I think. It's probably a more practical approach, actually. Any further questions about that or anything else I've been going on about? I think I'm overrunning, actually. 5 minutes before and 5 minutes after. There's the Mark 2, 3 and 4, by the way. That's our final system, how we envisage it. Going through using it for classification in primary healthcare, doctors' surgeries. And the most important slide, of course, is my book, which is... Oh, sorry. I did stick this in because I got the library to buy this book, right? And it's in the library, and there is a chapter on machine learning. So it goes on a lot about science technology, obviously well beyond this course, but there is a chapter, it's somewhat relevant because there is a chapter on machine learning and the history, which fascinates me, the history of deep learning, who invented it and how they invented it and so on. Right then, well I think that's more or less on the dot because they said you meant to stop, was it 5 minutes early and after and stop 5 minutes early or something like that, so I think we've done that. Any questions, drop me an email, the tutorial's coming up. Have you got one today, you guys? Yeah. Oh great, well Colette will be great, I think should be great, yeah, so no problem. Should be on your timetable. Is it okay, is it 0T134? Yeah, you know where that is. You go to the BRL, right, and ask Gordon, who's a great guy, and he'll take you there. The BRL reception in T block. Anybody will take, you'll find that, yeah. What do you find? I'll see you guys next week. Cheers.